Look, we do this because we're supposed to. It's a calling. You answered.
Ever since I was young, I was always excited to answer this elusive calling and discover what my purpose in life was supposed to be. So when I was 15 years old, I was beyond excited when our high school counselor thought it would be fun to have us all take a career aptitude test. For those who've never taken one of these tests, you can find them pretty much everywhere online, and they ask a bunch of pretty simple questions to get a sense of what careers you could do. For example, they'll ask questions like, do you like working with machines? Do you like painting? And so on. Taking this test for the first time, I was excited to see what my future could hold, what careers I could pursue, what callings I could answer, and ultimately, what my purpose in life could be. So I took my time and answered all the questions as honestly as I could. While I neared the end of the test, the room filled with excited chatter as many of the students discovered what was calling to them. Callings ranging from doctor, lawyer, engineer, and 100 others began circulating on everyone's screen. Everyone around me had so many possibilities for their future, and I couldn't wait to see mine. After what felt like thousands of questions, I finally got my results, and I just dove right in. The first career I was presented with was translator, which I really have never considered before. But being a translator wasn't exactly calling to me, especially because I'm only fluent in English. That career did not feel like it was supposed to be my purpose in life for the rest of my life. So I moved on to the second choice, which was a librarian. I didn't even know how to feel about that one. I mean, sure, I love books, but being a librarian was not something that I could see myself having a purpose with, at least not for my whole life. So I moved on to the third option, which was, well, there was no third option. What? Out of every career, every calling, every purpose in the world, I just had 2 options? Only 2? That couldn't possibly be right. How could I be limited to only 2 purposes when everyone else had so many? So I raised my hand, hoping the counselor would come along and tell me exactly what was wrong with the career test. But to my surprise, he took one glance at my screen, turned back to me, and said, "You did it wrong." And then he just walked away. I sat there, dumbfounded. How on earth could I have done a career aptitude test wrong? That's like doing a personality test, and at the end of it, it just says you have no personality. What? The worst part about that whole encounter, the reason why I still remember it to this day, wasn't because I received only 2 potential purposes in my life. It was because of the counselor, who had said, "You did it wrong." That statement wasn't directed towards a faulty software or a glitch in the system, but that was directed towards me. And that made me feel wrong. Like I wasn't fit for all these infinite possibilities for careers, and I couldn't have any inherent and deeper purpose with my life. I had always felt excited to answer one of these callings for a greater purpose in my life, but now it felt like maybe this dream was just a distraction, and I will have wasted my entire life waiting by a phone for a call that would never come. This feeling would follow me as I continued, aimless, throughout my education. Despite my lack of destination, I traversed the education pathway, surrounded by hundreds of others who had their own purposes. I tried to fit a mold in which I was a productive member of society, yet I had no idea what exactly I was supposed to produce. It felt like I didn't belong, and that I was masquerading amongst my ambitious peers. It felt like I was an imposter. When I think of the word imposter, I think of Among Us, a game about social deception in which you blend in amongst your fellow crewmates. This game overtook a huge portion of my life during the pandemic. Along with Among Us, a new show premiered at the tail end of 2021. The show was named Abbott Elementary, and it was an American workplace comedy following a group of elementary school teachers. When the show was gaining traction, I decided to watch the first episode.
What it do, baby boobs?
And stopped halfway through because I wasn't a fan of it. It felt like they were trying to fit a mold of a very specific style of TV show, and I couldn't help but compare it to other shows. Primarily, The Office, one of my all-time favorite shows that I've seen probably over 20 times. It has been years since I had watched a show in the style of The Office. You know, that mockumentary style in which they would have talking head scenes where a character would be interviewed and share their thoughts directly to the camera. It's the same style used in shows like Parks and Rec, Modern Family. Hell, even I made a spoof show that used this method in Among Us. Those were dark times. And because of that, I felt really burnt out by this style. Even the characters of Abbott Elementary all felt like inferior versions of other characters. For example, Janine felt like a different version of Leslie Knope. Gregory felt like a different version of Ben Wyatt. Ava at times felt like Michael Scott. Melissa felt like Meredith. Mr. Johnson felt like Creed. The list goes on, and each character felt like they were influenced by other characters that I had already loved. The show felt like it was masquerading amongst the all-time classics, and would soon be another forgettable drop in the sea of mockumentary-style shows. The final nail in the coffin for this show was the fact that it was about teachers. When it came to shows about noble professions such as doctors, lawyers, and now teachers, I always felt that the draw of these shows were because you get to see them answer the call, and see the nobility of their actions. It never felt like these shows were about the people. It was about the circumstances. But when it came to mockumentary shows like The Office and Parks and Rec, it never felt like Jim was called to be a paper salesman, or that Ron's purpose was to be a government worker. It felt like I was watching people who just happened to be office workers, and I never equated their jobs as part of them. But watching Abbott Elementary gave me such a weird feeling because I did equate their jobs as part of them, because teachers were seen as self-sacrificing saints that needed no reward for their virtue. I mean, clearly we don't reward them. Look at their salaries. But I felt that teachers were their profession first and foremost, and they were anything else second. For me, it felt like I was watching teachers who were trying to be regular people. And it was a show that was filled with imposters, just like myself in a journey to get an education. This imposter syndrome followed me as I received numerous amounts of rejections from all of the universities that I had applied to. Every college that I had applied to unanimously decided that I was not fit for their campuses. And ultimately, when it came to my grades, my education, my purpose in life, all I could think about was the counselor's words that were echoing throughout my head. You did it wrong. So I went to community college, still feeling like I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life and feeling like I had royally screwed up my future. I continued going through the motions, wondering what my purpose in life would be and giving up on any sort of call. One day, in calculus class, my teacher came up to me and told me I was doing a wonderful job in his class. I was shocked. Sure, my grades were pretty good, but that's because it was my second time taking the class since I flunked it in high school. Even during every class, I would sit with one headphone in, listening to music while the other ear lazily listened to his lecture. Why on earth was he saying that I did a wonderful job in his class? He then gave me a recommendation to work for our community college's tutoring center, where I'd be helping other students like myself in a wide array of topics. Me? I was an imposter. I wasn't doing anything right. Why me? I don't know what on earth he was talking about. But I accepted the job without hesitation because it paid more than my part-time job stocking shelves at Walmart. I had never considered being a tutor or a teacher, but when I had started, it changed my entire life. All it took was a teacher taking the time to say, I think you'd be great at this, for me to finally embark on a path towards a purpose and to feel like I got a call. I had no idea that that's what I was missing, that something so simple, such a brief, encouraging moment would have positive repercussions throughout the rest of my life. And I had no idea that it would take a teacher to change everything for me, because we take teachers for granted, just like I've been taking Abbott Elementary for granted. When Abbott Elementary was renewed for a second season, which feels like it's pretty rare for a TV show to be renewed these days. I couldn't believe it. They wanted more of that show? Granted, I had never watched past the first episode, but I was shocked to see it being such a success despite my negative feelings towards it. It had even won numerous awards from just its very first season. That was unheard of. I mean, if you look at the first season of The Office, it would definitely not have been renewed for a second season today. The most insane part about all of this was when I was at my in-laws' home and I was walking past the TV only to see Abbott Elementary on the screen. No way. The greatest accomplishment the show had ever achieved was to be watched by my in-laws, who rarely watched any new TV shows. There could be only one explanation. The one that I feared. As I sat down and watched random scenes from random episodes, I could only deduce one logical explanation for all the success that the show had. Abbott Elementary was good? There's no way. I mean, it's about teachers. I used to teach. There was nothing special about that. How accurate could it even be about teachers and still be good? I mean, I never thought about my time as a tutor as anything special. In fact, I was 18 when I started tutoring, and the vast majority of my students were far older than I was. It felt like I had no business being there, and there were so many questions that were just tricky for me to answer. One of the hardest questions I had ever received, one that I still struggle with to this day, was when a student raised their hand and asked me, how can I do 3 times 8 faster? I stammered, you just kind of know? What kind of answer was that? That answer wasn't good enough. So I stuck with her and tried every single possible explanation that I could do. Any method I supplied, whether it was adding 8 3 times, doing a drawing grid of 3 rows and 8 columns, or even saying use a table, wasn't good or fast enough. I felt defeated. Memorizing was too challenging for her, and all of the answers I supplied were just not good enough. I kept thinking that my calculus teacher who recommended me for the job was wrong. I should not have even answered this call. Or worse, maybe this call was meant for someone else. After all, I was an amateur, surrounded by the professionals of teaching. And I was in no way, shape, or form as noble of a person as these other teachers. I mean, I took the job because it paid more. I would especially feel this when I would crack open a textbook hoping to find an answer that I didn't have with me. This was a routine occurrence, and I couldn't help but feel that I was not as great as my peers. How could I be as great as the greats themselves, those already with degrees who graciously lent their time to help teach those that are on the same path that I was? While juggling my own classes and juggling feeling like an imposter with this job, a familiar student entered the learning building on my shift. They reached their seats and immediately raised their hand for assistance with a problem. But before any other tutor can head towards them, they waved me down instead. I was confused. Maybe it was a question that I had helped previously on, or maybe it was a question that I had gotten wrong, and they just wanted to tell me how wrong I truly was. I don't know. But as I got to the table, before I could even sit down properly, they turned to me and said, "I like the way you explain things better." I stared at them, confused, but they were adamant. I was someone that they valued. For the longest time, I felt like I was pretending to be the best, pretending to be like these other teachers or tutors who had degrees and years more experience than I had. But hearing a student tell me that they liked the way that I taught made me realize that maybe I had not been giving myself enough grace. I was expecting myself to answer this call, this purpose in life, and be the best that I could possibly be right out of the gate. I was surrounded by so many other people that were the best, and that put an immense pressure on me. So I constantly felt like I was an imposter, because I wasn't the best. But when it comes to helping and teaching others, it's never about being the best. It's about doing your best to help them. Years into the job, as I became a go-to tutor for things like physics, math, and other things, there was a point where I stopped feeling like an imposter. In fact, every career in education that I've had made me feel like I was answering an incorrect call. But over time, every time, I became someone who knew what they were doing, and I became someone who belonged. Even my coworkers, who were these noble teachers and educators, felt like they became fully realized as the barriers of how I viewed them broke down, and I started seeing them as people who were just like me. All I needed was time. And time was not something that I had given Abbott Elementary. Leaving the first episode midway would never allow it to grow into something I loved, and watching clips here and there did a disservice to the entire production as a whole. So when the show was renewed for season 3, I decided to finally watch it. Finishing the first episode changed everything about the show and made me realize how self-centered I was being. All it took was Janine saying,
I don't care if you think I'm good at this or not anymore. I care about whether or not I can make a change.
Followed shortly after by Barbara powerfully saying,
We have to be able to do it all. We are admin, we are social workers, we are therapists, we are second parents. Hell, sometimes we're even first. Why? It's showing the money.
It has been years since the first time I had ever tutored a student, and I was blown away how Abbott Elementary blends the nobility of being a teacher with the humanity of each individual character. I used to believe that each character was an inferior version of another character I had loved, but given enough time, each character became the best versions of themselves. Everyone brought their own individual quirks, as well as methods to be able to do the best they can for their students. Yet despite all that they do, there are still times when they do falter, because they are all just people. For example, Barbara, who is seen as the model teacher, struggles with learning new technology, despite her claiming,
I'm Miss Tech, I love tech. Shop at the App Store, got a Hotmail. I once even rode in a Tesla.
but the other teachers discover she's been lying because she feels like she's being aged out by all this new technology. She was feeling like she was an imposter, despite being a celebrated teacher for many years. Yet despite her shortcomings, despite any shortcomings of any of the characters, they band together and help each other out. Because no one can be the best, and as teachers,
sometimes we end up learning something ourselves.
there are dozens of heartfelt moments where I can truly empathize and see myself reflected in all of these characters. But I think what the show does best is showing you how to answer a call,
I was called, I answered.
and showing us a deeper sense of purpose. And the more time I spent with the show, the more I realized that the biggest gift I could reward the show was with my time. Because that's what all great teachers do. They're patient. Every question and every student, they greet them with a smile and give them a chance to shine. They showcase to every child that they are important enough for one of the most precious resources, time. When you can give enough time to answer a call, you can remove the feeling of being an imposter, and you can truly feel a greater sense of purpose. Finishing season 2 of the show, I was extremely excited for season 3, so much so that we bought a Hulu subscription for it once again. Every week, my wife and I are so excited to sit on the couch and tune into the latest episode. But as soon as we watched the first episode, we saw Janine, a person who would do anything for her students, no longer work there.
So yeah, I work for the school district now. You guys missed a lot.
As the show begins to recap us that Janine had accepted a fellowship, though limited for just a few months, it's the first time we see Janine in a role that wasn't her calling, that wasn't her purpose. That shocked me. How could a show that made me fall in love with people who are teachers, the art of teaching, and the calling of being a teacher suddenly make the main character not a teacher? The purpose and nobility of being a teacher is far greater than any reward. Callings aren't supposed to end because you get $2 more per hour.
$2? That's like $1 million.
How could she just be okay with that? Doesn't she know that her purpose is to her students that rely on her? The difference that she could be making by being with her actual students rather than going through the red tape of bureaucracy to make a change is far greater, right? And then it dawned on me. What am I doing? I've spent all this time reminiscing about teaching, answering the call with working in educational roles, that I haven't even realized that my call ended a long time ago, and I'm not working in any sort of educational role anymore. Why haven't I noticed this until now? Why haven't I grieved the loss of such a noble profession? How could I be okay with knowing that I had left my very own purpose years ago, and I hung up on a call that kept me fulfilled? What am I doing with my life? With this empty, hollow feeling that Abbott Elementary had reminded me of, I realized that the only way to fill this void was rewatching Abbott Elementary. I wanted to find myself experiencing the feeling of a greater purpose once again by all the teachers of Abbott. But this time, I had found what struck me the most wasn't from a teacher. It was from Mr. Johnson, as he recounted the many calls that he has answered throughout his life.
A minor league baseball bunting coach, a tastefully nude model, sold RVs for summer.
This was something I never really considered. And as Gregory asked,
Wait, you never dreamed of just doing one thing?
Sure I have. But a dream can be a distraction just as easy as it can be a goal.
I don't know where along in my life that I was taught that we should view our purpose as a singular thing. But it's a revelation that Mr. Johnson, someone who I would never have expected, has reminded me that I was so hyper-focused on getting a single call in my lifetime. I always thought that I would have wasted my life by the phone, waiting to answer a call that would never come. But I never entertained the idea that there could be more than one call.
Without that rejection, I never would have found the other stuff that I love.
In fact, there can be multiple calls all throughout our lives, even of varying lengths. And Janine leaving her kids to work for the district wasn't hanging up on her call. It was answering another. Because again,
It isn't about being the best. It's about doing your best.
whether you're doing your best as a teacher, an administrator, or even a janitor, Abbott Elementary constantly reminds me that our purpose should be to do our best and to give it time. Because there are so many shows like it, just like there are so many teachers. But no two shows or teachers are the same, just like there are no two students that are the same. And we need to give it time to encourage growth. When a child brings up an artwork that looks atrocious, you hang it up on the fridge anyway. Because we all need that encouragement. We're all still that child looking for that dopamine hit of encouragement for doing something that we love. And although purpose is different for everyone, encouragement isn't. We all give out encouragement like it's a scarce resource, but it's abundant and can change someone's entire life, even in small ways. Because we're all just people who are not defined by our professions, and who genuinely want the ones that we care about to succeed. Good teachers do this for all of their students. We all want to do the best that we can. And our purpose is not just one fixed thing, or two, like a translator or a librarian. Purpose is fluid, and we can find different things to fight for all throughout our lives. But having that one person in your corner telling you that you can do this changes everything. So, to the counselor that told me you did it wrong, I just want you to know that I'm not mad. In fact, I know it must have been pretty difficult managing a bunch of teens and juggling all of their questions for their futures. But when I asked you why I only got 2 things for my future, I wouldn't have said, you did it wrong. I would have said, don't be discouraged because you only got 2 options. You are bound by nothing. And no matter what you do, I'm sure you're going to achieve great things. Greatness takes time, and I hope you give yourself patience and grace. But remember, a career is not a purpose. You are not defined by your job. no matter how much it may consume you. You need to take care of yourself because you are a person with amazing talents and you did nothing wrong. There are many calls that you may get throughout your life, but it'll never be too late to pick up your phone and dial instead. I would have loved to have heard that.